What's up guys, Pragmatic Pete here, and today we're going to be changing the serpentine belt and the pulley on a 2004 Acura RSX. We're going to be using the Gates belt, and here's your part number. It is a K070677, and I can guarantee you that this is a direct fit. And the pulley we got is just some pulley from Canada, I don't know the name brand. So here's all the tools you're going to need. Of course you'll need your belt and your pulley. You will need something to remove your tire. This is a torque wrench, but you'll need a breaker bar to remove your tire with the appropriate size socket for your tire. A 10mm socket wrench. A flathead will come in handy. It also comes in handy to have a 14mm combination wrench. If you have an angled combination wrench, you will be in much better shape. And also, this tool is practically a requirement for the job. This is a belt removal tool from Autozone. Part number 27115. This is $30. You can rent this and return it absolutely free of cost if you want. But strangely enough, it does not come with the socket head that you need for this job. It comes with like a 14 or a 13, a 15, a 16, and a 17. But for this job, you need a 14mm socket. So these are all the parts you need. In addition to that, you'll need a jack to jack up your car because we will be removing the passenger side front tire. You also need some jack stands, and last thing but not least, thread lock to make sure you do the job right. Anyways, let's get into it, and I hope you learned something. Thanks for stopping by. We are going to jack the car up so that we have access to the belt on the right hand side or passenger side. So we'll put it in gear, of course, and raise our parking brake as much as we can. For extra safety, just to make sure the car doesn't roll when we jack it up, we're going to throw wheel chocks under the rear tires. Now we're going to begin jacking up the car. Instead of using the jacking point here, we're going to jack it up from the subframe. The reason we're doing that is because we're going to need to put the jack stand at the jacking point. One important tip is that if you don't have power tools, you'll need to remove or loosen your lug nuts prior to lifting up the car. If you try to remove your lug nuts with the car up in the air, you're just going to spin the tire, even with the brake applied. Now we'll jack up the car just enough to get the front wheel off the ground. Once the wheel's off the ground, you'll want to grab your jack stand and place it on the jacking point. Once you've got the car jacked up, make sure to place your jack stand directly below this weld here. Now if you'll notice here, this is plastic. This is not. So you want to make sure you put your jack stand here, or else you're going to cause damage to your car. Now raise your jack stand up, and it will lock into place. We may need to raise the jack just a little bit higher so that we can bring our jack stand up one more notch. Now that we've got our jack stand up a few notches, the tire's well off the ground, we can lower the jack slowly by turning it slowly. That was not slowly. Once your jack stand is holding the car up, make sure that your tire is still off the ground, and we're good to go. Folks, as a safety note, always use a jack stand. Never rely on a jack to hold a car up, especially if you're going to be working under it. Jacks work with hydraulic pressure, and that hydraulic pressure can leak. If that happens and the jack fails, it could kill you. Always use a jack stand. As I said before, unless you're using power tools, you'll need to loosen your lug nuts prior to jacking the car off the ground. I'm using a power tool to remove mine, so I won't have that issue. Now you want to fully remove the tire. Once you've removed the tire from the car, there's a great place to put it, underneath the car. We do that just in case the jack happens to fail. It really is an extra precaution just to be safe. You want to make sure that you put the wheel side facing up, or the rim side facing up. The other side's not going to have as much surface area, so if the car falls on it, it's just going to hit the outer rim of the tire. If this side's facing up, it's got more surface area to hit. Plus, if you put this side facing down and then you slide it against the concrete, you're going to destroy the rim. That's bad, especially if you're working on a customer's car. Ask me how I know. The next step is going to be removing these fasteners. There's one here and one here, and I think that's it. How these fasteners work is a pretty cool design. They look just like this. They're kind of thin on the inside, and then when you press the button, it expands in the diameter. Just like that. And that's how it holds the pieces together. It's a pretty cool design. Chances are, taking these out, you may break one. It depends on how dirty your car is, where you live, how much rust there is, all that kind of stuff. So be prepared. They might break. When removing these fasteners, there is a special tool that you can use. I'm just going to be using a flathead screwdriver. What you want to do is put the flathead screwdriver in the tab here. Let's zoom in on that. Now that you've got a slightly better view, you can see there are tabs on this side and on the opposite side. They're kind of hard to see. Let's clean it up a little bit. That made it a lot more obvious. So what we're going to do is we're going to insert our flathead screwdriver here and press outward. That will release the inner diameter, make it smaller, and allow the fastener to come out. It may break, it may not. We'll be careful. We'll see what happens. So we slip our screwdriver underneath the tab and then lift outwards. I got it out without breaking it. What I did was I pressed on the outer collar and then pulled on this piece. Pulled it outwards, and I pressed this piece inwards so that it stayed tight to the body of the car. Now we should be able to remove this piece as well. On this particular car, we were missing a fastener here, so this piece is ready to be moved out of the way. We're not going to remove it completely because there are several more fasteners underneath. We can just slightly bend it and place it against the brake dust shield. Just like that. It's out of the way enough. Zooming in on the belt, we can see it's quite discolored. It should be black. This should give us enough room to get in here and put the belt in. It's not going to be easy, but it's enough. Now in the front of the engine, you'll notice there's almost no room to work. We have a power steering reservoir in the way. This is our power steering pump. Down here is our pulley that we'll be replacing, thing I'm pointing at. Motor mount in the way. A lot of things in the way, but it's not as hard as it looks, trust me. First thing we'll do, remove the power steering reservoir. The power steering reservoir is held on with a single bolt. It's 10 millimeters. So let's take that off. Make sure to hold on to that bolt because losing a bolt can make an easy job a much harder job. We're going to hold this, we're going to pick up the power steering reservoir, we'll grab the bracket as well, and put these somewhere safe. Now that you've got your power steering reservoir free, we can move it out of the way. It is attached with some lines, that's okay, they are flexible, we just don't want to be extremely aggressive with them. Just slide them over here. And that should give us a lot more room to work. Now that we've got the power steering reservoir removed, we can just barely see the pulley that we're going to replace. It's right here. So let's grab our specialty tool. This pulley here is part of an assembly that puts tension on the belt, holding it in place. How we remove the tension is to place a 14 millimeter socket or wrench on this bolt and pull it towards us. As you may notice, there's almost no clearance between the pulley bolt and the motor mount, so we're going to be using a special tool. Strangely enough, the special tool that we bought from Autozone does not come with the appropriate size, so you'll need a 14 millimeter socket. Alternatively, you can use an angled wrench. Now we're going to put the 14 millimeter socket over that bolt and pull it towards us to remove the belt. Keep in mind there's very little clearance here, so it's going to take some doing. Now we've got it on place, we'll pull the bar towards us and remove tension. Once you got the tension removed, the belt should slide off fairly easily. Remove the belt, release the tension. Once you've removed the belt from the power steering pump, you won't need this tool for a little while, so you can put it away. Even though the belt is loose, it's still going to be quite difficult to take off. So you can make a judgment call here. You can either work the belt out, which will take a few minutes, or you can cut the belt. If you're not absolutely certain that you have the correct replacement part, don't cut the belt. You don't want to have a car that can't drive because you cut your belt. Even with the belt removed from the power steering, it's still going to be a little bit of a pain. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the side of the car and remove the belt from below. As you can see here, our belt has a lot less pressure or tension on it now, so it's very easy to slip it off the crankshaft and the compressor pulley. Now still, I think we may be able to work the belt out from beneath. If it gets stuck on something, don't just yank on it. Figure out what it's stuck on. So we just gave it a little push from the top, and I think it's free now. Maybe not. Oh, as we see here, it's still wrapped around the alternator. Now I didn't film the rest of the belt removal because it's going to be the same or different for everybody. Simply remove the belt. Move it out of the way, pull where it needs to be pulled, push where it needs to be pushed. I pulled my belt from the bottom. Now we want to place your old belt next to your new belt and make sure that they are extremely close in size. For this job, we're using the Gates. Pulling our belts together, they're very, very similar in size, so we're almost certain we have the right part. The last thing you want to do is put all the work into putting the belt in the car, only to realize it's the wrong size. Now, I believe I mentioned this before, we are going to be replacing that pulley, just as a preventative measure. This car has 96,000 miles on it, and those pulleys tend to go bad. So to remove the pulley, we're going to insert our special tool with a 14mm socket. As you can see, that took a little bit of doing. Now to remove this bolt, we simply press it this way. Sorry, I've got the camera zoomed in. Keep in mind, on the back of this pulley, there's a nut holding that threads into this bolt. If you remove the pulley completely, or if you remove the bolt completely, you will probably lose that nut. So be careful. We just want to break this for now. So we're going to press. There we go, we heard it break. I'm fairly certain that this little indentation here was designed so that it was actually possible to do this job. Otherwise, you'd have to remove motor mount. Now that we've broken the bolt, we're going to very carefully remove that bolt so that we don't lose the nut that's holding it in on the rear side. And I will show you a diagram of that. Fortunately, I have a 14mm ratcheting socket wrench, or ratcheting combination wrench. You can do this with any normal wrench. You could also do it with the tool that we use to remove, with this thing, the special tool. You could do that as well. I'm going to use this because it's a little bit faster and it gives me a little bit more control. I'm also going to keep my right hand on the back side so I can hold that bolt in so that it doesn't, or the nut rather, so that it doesn't go flying. I've actually got my thumb pressed against the back side of the pulley so that that bolt does not, nut does not just fly off. I'm just now realizing my ratcheting wrench is broken. Damn you, Stanley. Now once you've unscrewed the bolt all the way, you'll notice it comes with a little hat. I believe the purpose of this is to apply even pressure against the pulley. Now I've still got my right hand against the nut on the back of the bolt, of the pulley. That's very bright. Now we've got the old pulley off. There's actually no need for me to remove this nut that I'm holding in place right now, but I'm going to press it out just so that I can show you. So now this is the nut that goes into the rear of the tensioner assembly. It's actually the only thing that that bolt threads into. So if you lose it, you're in trouble. You cannot finish the job. I did this on my other car and I had to buy a whole new assembly. Well, I could have just bought the nut, but my car has 160,000 miles on it, so I decided to go ahead and replace the whole thing. Now, one thing I noticed while removing this bolt, I'm not sure if you can see that. This bolt has Loctite on it. So we're going to make sure to put some Loctite back on this, of course, when we reinstall the new pulley. Before we install the new pulley, we want to compare the new pulley with the old pulley, just to make sure it's the right part. Unfortunately, I've had my fair share of receiving the wrong part from the dealership. So if we compare, they're exactly the same size. The only difference is our new pulley is made in Canada, so it's going to make our car 5% friendlier. Now we are going to install our brand new pulley. It's fairly simple. We want to make sure that we place this nut back into the recessed groove underneath or behind the assembly. And then we'll place the pulley over with the hat over that, and then finally the bolt after we apply some thread locker. We're going to use blue thread lockers. Now it's quite difficult to hold that nut and install thread locker. So we'll put the thread lock on the bolt first. Once you've got a bit of thread locker on the bolt, we're ready to reinstall. First things first, we will take the nut that goes on the back side of the assembly and put that into place. It's a very tight fit, so if you can avoid taking this off, I recommend it. It actually took me almost 5 minutes just to get that nut back into the back of that tensioner assembly. But now we're ready to put the new pulley on. So, we've got our new pulley. We've got our spacer slash pressure balancer, if I had to call it something. Put that on there, just like so. And then we've got our same bolt that we took out, and we've got a little bit of Loctite on there. It's going to go just like that. I'm going to be quite careful not to push that bolt out of the rear. So I'm going to keep a finger on the back side and start by placing the pulley all right. Now we're going to grab our bolt and our spacer slash balancer. I'm continuing to hold my finger on the rear side so that we don't push that bolt or that nut out and lose it. And now it's simply just threading it in by hand. That was about 1,000,000 times easier than I thought it was going to be. And now we want to tighten that down. I'll put the torque specs in the video. Now the torque specs for the pulley bolt is 41 foot-pounds, but there's no way to get a torque wrench into that small space. So I'm going to be tightening it by hand. For that, I'm just going to use a normal combination wrench. This is where an angled wrench would come in handy. Now that we've got the pulley tightened down, it's time to start putting on the new belt. Now the easiest way to do this, in my opinion, is to start from the bottom. So we're going to wrap around the crankshaft, then we'll go to the compressor, then we'll go around the large pulley. I'll show you a diagram. Before we install our new belt, let's look at the difference between the new belt and the old belt. As you can see, the new belt is a much deeper black, and the old belt is actually kind of a grayish brown color. You can also see striations here, where this belt was starting to fail. In addition to that, some of the inner belt is coming apart, so it's a good time to change this belt. You'll also want to look at the back side of the belt if you're just inspecting your belt. As you see here, we've got some small cracks along the inside ribs. Nothing too excessive, but definitely worth replacing. Now, as I said before, I believe the easiest way to do this is to start from the bottom. We're going to go around the crankshaft, the AC compressor, and work our way up. As again, here's the diagram. Also, now's a great time to check out the bushings on your control arms. As you can see, mine are showing a little bit of wear, but they're not completely destroyed. So now, it's time to stop talking and get to work. As you're installing this, everything will be pretty loose. That's okay. We do want to make sure that we're not damaging our new belt though, so be careful not to force it. We're going to wrap around this, and then we'll go from there. So I've shown you the diagram, but I'll do my best to kind of explain what we're going to do. Down there you can see I've already got the belt around the compressor. I know it's very difficult to see this, but I apologize. I've got the brightest light I can get, and it's still kind of hard to see. So we've got our belt. So far it's routed against only the crankshaft and the compressor. Going from the compressor, we're going to go up, and then we're going to go around this large silver pulley, and then from that silver pulley, we're going to go over to the alternator. From the alternator, we go up to the AC belt, but that's the last step. I'm actually using the pry tool to reach the belt in places where my hands can't get. Right now, we're trying to place the belt over the alternator. It goes straight from the alternator to power steering pump. That's actually not true, but that's how we're going to install it, and I'll show you why in a moment. That was a weird noise. Now, all we've got left to do is the power steering pump. So we're going to route the belt loosely over our tensioner, making sure the back side is against the tensioner. If it's not against the tensioner, you've installed something terribly wrong, so start from scratch. Now we're going to use our specialty tool, put it on our pulley with as much leverage as possible. So we're going to go from an angle this way instead of putting it like here, because we want to be able to turn as much as possible. And if we put it on this way, we won't have as much room to turn before we hit the body of the car. So we're going to try to put it on at an angle like this to give us as much leeway as possible. Looks like that's not going to happen, so we'll just put it on like here. Now as we remove tension, we'll slip the belt Now we've got the tension removed on the pulley and belt system. We need to make sure that the belt seats fully on the power steering pump. Not sure why I'm holding on to the slide. Let me put that down and give me some extra room. All right, so now the belt, flat side of the belt is against our new pulley, and we'll slowly release it, the tension. We'll remove our tool. Now we need to inspect every single pulley to make sure that the belt is properly seated. We don't want to start the car unless we've done this step, because if it's not properly seated, you're going to destroy your brand new belt that you just worked so hard to install. So let's take a look. So starting under the car, we will look at our crankshaft. It's kind of hard to see if it's fully seated, but we'll look from this angle. Looks good to me. It's got a little dirty, a little dinged up from the install, but that's a-okay. Next, we're going to look at our air compressor, or sorry, air conditioner compressor. Maybe better to look at that from the top. Come on, camera. Now it's a good thing we checked, because I can see a little bit of an exposed edge on the compressor. So I think our belt is just one notch too far to the right. So all we have to do is put the tension tool back onto our pulley here, and we're going to slide that over just one notch. Before we do that, let's go ahead and look at our power steering pump. As you can see, there are no exposed ribs on the power steering pump, and then that is it. Alternator is good as well. So let's fix our issue here, and we are good to start the car. Now it's a good idea to start the car before you put everything back together in most situations when you're working on a car. However, in this case, all we have to do is put our power steering reservoir back on with the mount. It's one bolt. Let's go ahead and do that, and then we'll start the car and check our work. One last thing before we start the car, I'm going to go ahead and put this cover back on just so it's out of the way. I don't want it to hit up against anything. I really don't think that's going to happen, but better to be safe than sorry. As you recall, we're missing a fastener here from the start. Unfortunately, I have a new set of fasteners. I believe I picked these up on Amazon for about $10. There's your barcode. I think you could probably type that in on Amazon and find it. Or you could just type in Honda fasteners. They work pretty good. Installing these is fairly simple, even though I'm making it look difficult. You simply take your fastener when the head is out and place it into the hole and then press down, and that will secure the unit. Just like that. There we go. Rigid. The marvels of modern engineering. Now let's start the car. I almost forgot. Before you start your car, make sure you take all your mechanical tools off of the car. Last thing you want is one of these things to fly into your belts and cause massive damage. Also, don't hit your car with your own tools. So let's start it up. Once you've confirmed a successful installation of your serpentine belt, it's time to put the car back on the ground. Start by putting the tire back on the car. Now, on the Honda, or on the Acura RSX, the torque rating is 82 foot-pounds, which I think is kind of low. So I go a little bit higher than that. But that's what it is, just in case you're curious. So get all of your lug nuts on there, finger tight, and now you're ready to lower the car. Try to lower your car as gently as possible. Sometimes it just doesn't happen. The final step in this job is to reinstall your lug nuts properly. So we're going to grab a torque wrench and take care of that. Once you've lowered your car, you'll want to make sure to tighten down your lug nuts in a star pattern. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or similar. Don't tighten down one lug nut all the way to 90 foot-pounds and then go to the next one. Do it evenly. After that, all you've got to do is remove the wheel chocks from the back of your car and you are done. Alright guys, well that was my very first instructional video ever. Poor lighting, I know. It's a difficult spot to record. If you enjoyed it, please do let me know. If you'd like to see other repair videos, specifically around the Acura RSX, let me know. I've got plenty of things I could do to this car. Just let me know. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like or subscribe. Take it easy.